Welcome back to the channel and the next episode in our search for what happened to the cars from Wheeler Dealers. In this episode we are going to look at the 6th and 7th cars that were featured in Series 6, and we've got two extremes here. We've got a 1975 Ferrari Dino 308 GT4, and at the other extreme we've got a 1988 Mini City. So first up we have got a 1975 Ferrari Dino 308 GT4. That's a bit of a mouthful. This program first went out on the 20th of October 2009, and for this episode they had doubled their usual £5 budget up to £10,000, because let's be honest, you weren't going to get a reasonable Ferrari for £5 even back in 2009. But they found this Ferrari for £8,750, but it was fairly cosmetically challenged in the main. It got dents in the bodywork front and rear, which Ed managed to pull out, and then he got it sorted out, ready and prepped it for a full body respray, which obviously gave the budget quite a wallop. Under the front, I'd call it the valance, but I can't remember exactly what they called it, but sort of basically under the front bumper area was a panel which Ed managed to repair with fiberglass. And finally, the other big job we had was the mid-engine V8 needed some new exhaust manifolds, so that was quite a tricky job, but obviously good old Ed managed to do it. So how did the numbers work out on this one? Well, as I already said, Mike paid $8,750 for this car, and cost-wise they spent £3,130 on it. So of that, 1,900 was the paint job, so that was always going to put a dent in the budget. But when they came to sell it, they sold it for £13,000, which gave them a profit of 1,120, so not too bad in the big scale of things. But if we whiz forward to 2024, so get a feel of how the value of that car has changed over the last 15 years, what we do, we go and have a look at Practical Classics Magazine's valuation guide, and for their Condition 1 vehicles, and see what it tells us. And in this case, it says that car is now worth £36,500. So that has given an uplift of £23,500 since it was sold in the programme, which I think is not bad. It's not as big as some of the cars we've seen recently, but it's still a good return. So the bit you're all really here for, what happened to ORC 728P after the show? Well, if we use My Car Check as our first stop, we can see on the front page it's all good ticks. There's sort of no nasty scraps or anything else horrible, stolen or anything like that happened to this one. So that's a good start. If we do a little bit more digging, we can see this car's had a fairly changeable history when it comes to owners. It's had 18 previous keepers, and the latest owner acquired it in May 22, so not that long ago. And the previous owner sold it, funny enough, just before the pandemic hit back in 2020. The other interesting point to note, I realised, this car wasn't originally red. It was originally blue-black. Back in 1988, the colour got changed to red, which is obviously a much more common Ferrari colour. So if we look at the MOT history, this gives us a nice heartbeat of what that car's been up to. There's an MOT in July 09. Now, with the programme going out in October, I imagine that is the one that Wheeler Dealers put the car through. And more or less went straight through, a couple of advisories, and at that point it's done 94,000 miles. And in 2010, goes through the MOT again, no problem. 2011, it fails. No big drama there, nothing too big on the job list. But interestingly, between the MOT failure, when the previous MOT had already expired, and its retest, it did 350 miles. So I could only assume the MOT test station was a long way from where they lived. And then 2012 goes through again. Interestingly, well, I did find this picture on Flickr by Jamie A, and it looks like it's taken at some form of car show of the Ferrari, and it's, I must say, it is looking in really good condition. That paint job is still looking really good. And then off it goes again. 2013 goes through 2014, and this is where our good old friends Piston Heads, I found a post by, who was it, Super Bock, and he said he'd seen it at a Ferrari Performance Day at Silverstone during 2014, and as you can see by the picture, it's still looking pretty good. 2015, still no dramas going through. 2016, it did fail, but then passed at retest, so no big issues there. 2017, again, no big problems. But interesting, I did find this picture of it again on Flickr by Gary Walton in 2017, taken at Bicester Heritage. And I've got to say, it is still looking remarkably good in that red paintwork. It then seems to go quiet for a couple of years on the MOT. Now, bear in mind, 2018, cars over 40 years didn't need a retest, so that may be why it wasn't put in for a test. But in 2020, it did get in for another test, and passed again, no problems at all. But interestingly, the mileage was only 99,000, so you can see it's done remarkably few miles since it was on the programme. And to be honest, at that point, I haven't really got anything more on it. I know it's still MOT and tax, so it is on the road, but it seems to have kept a remarkably low profile for a car which, you know, they launched the second half of this Series 6 with this Ferrari. I thought there would be more on the internet about it, but I'm afraid there's not. So it's still out there, but I haven't got much of a story to tell you, I'm afraid. So on to our second car, and this really is two extremes this episode. This time we've got a 1988 Mini City 1000cc. Now the City was very much the base model of the Mini range at the time, and this programme went out on the 27th of October 2009. Now the idea behind this particular programme was they wanted to build a Mini to celebrate the fact that it was 50 years since the first Mini was produced in 1959, and there was a big international Mini meeting being held at Longbridge, which was near to where the Minis were originally manufactured. Mike sourced this Mini even for just £700. It looked a little bit scruffy, but Ed set to work on it. They fitted a nice set of Mini-like alloy wheels with gold centres and new tyres. They put on an engine dress-up kit with various chrome parts. And the big thing that everyone seems to remember is the carbon fibre body wrap with that Union Jack on the roof. On the interior, they really went to town, fitted some Cobra bucket racing seats, put a new rear seat cover on, replaced the door cards, and on the dashboard took out the more modern version of the Mini Dash and fitted an original style binnacle with the centre speedo. So when it came to the numbers, how did things work out? Well, as already mentioned, the car cost £700. The costs on it were £1,590. So after they'd sold it, which they did by auction at that Longbridge show, they sold it for £2,600. That left a profit of £310. Now, with the hours that Ed had put into this car, I'm not quite sure what his hourly rate is, but I don't think it'd been very good out of that profit. So let's fast forward to 2024 and see how the value of that car has changed. Well, using Practical Classics magazine again, their suggested valuation of that car is £4,850. So over the original sale on the programme, that gives an uplift of £2,250. So what happened to F402 ORV after the show? Well, we know it was auctioned off at the International Mini Meeting, and interestingly, that Mini Meeting was in October 09, and obviously that's when the car was sold. But I look back, and the previous MOT was September 08, so that car was, you know, virtually out of MOT at the point they sold it, because interestingly, it then got an MOT in November 09. It had a couple of minor failures, but otherwise got through. It then went back for MOT again a year later, and interestingly, it had only done 60 miles at that point, which, you know, it was almost a run to the MOT station and back, really, isn't it? And then November 11 went through again, no problem. And October 12, it passed after quite a few failures, but as a whole, most of them were just wear and tear kind of things. They weren't sort of seismic problems. It was just a bit of maintenance, really. And then September 13, I actually found a post on the Mini forum from somebody called Mini Mad RKH, and he had shared some pictures he'd taken at the Stamford Hall mini meeting. And there we go, on the right hand side there is F402. Seems to have acquired some little brown leather bonnet straps, but otherwise it's sort of still about and hanging on. And then a month later, October 13, it went in for another MOT, and again it was wear and tear stuff mainly. There was a little bit of corrosion starting to creep in, and also there was a comment about the noise of the exhaust was quite excessive. But obviously after some repairs, it then got a pass, so it's off again. Then it all gets a little bit interesting, because in the 3rd of October 2014, went in for MOT, failed, has got quite a few faults going on there. So whoever had it obviously took it away. They then came back again on the 28th of October, so nearly a month later, and it failed again. This time only on a couple of minor points. But oddly, it never got represented for that one, because the following May in 2015, it then got submitted for another MOT, had a new selection of failures, but a week later it got a pass. So it was off again. Now at this point I did pick up a little bit more information on it. Again, back on the Mini forum, there was Spud133 had commented that he believed this car was actually in Norfolk by one of the Mini Club or Mini Forum owners up there, and had mentioned the baffle had been taken out of the exhaust. So that does link back to that failure with the noisy exhaust. But that's it for the time being on that one. That MOT ran out in sort of 2016, and it all goes quiet until just last autumn, because it's back. It's got an MOT last September and not one advisory on it. So that car has definitely been sort of resuscitated, shall we say. But let's have a look with my car check, see what we can note that's going on with the ownership. Well, it's interesting that the current owner acquired it in July 22, so about a year before this latest MOT. So it looks like it's been picked up as a restoration refurbishment project maybe, and a year later presented for an MOT and it's back on the road. The previous owner had it about 10 years, so it hadn't been sort of passed around, so someone had loved it for quite a period of time. But I think that's really great to see that. If I'd done this sort of 6 months ago, we would have thought that that one was lost, but it's back and on the road. So if you know any more about it, we'd love to hear from you. Well, let me stop you there, because actually I do know something about it. And would you believe, just after we got this video ready for release, this appeared on eBay. And there it is. It's our F402 Mini, and it's up for sale, and for sale in Norfolk, which is where we thought it was, MOT, as we'd already done the research on. It said it's had new seals and a few patches underneath. It's still obviously got the wrap. It says it's been garaged the majority of time since the program, which has protected the wrap. And there it is, up for sale for £17,500, or potentially looking for a swap for an early Mark 1 Mini. Now interestingly, you're going to go, well, actually, you said that was only worth $4,850 earlier. Well, ultimately, something's only worth what someone's prepared to pay for it. But as a comparison, I had a look up. Nearest I could find in value for that was a Mini Clubman 1275 GT that was produced between 1970 and 1980, which we know are quite sought after. And a condition one on that at the moment is valued at £13,500. But hey, there we go. Anyway, as you were, carry on. I really hope you've enjoyed those two real extremes, a Mini and a Ferrari. I never thought I'd put those two together in a video. And if you have enjoyed it, it'll be great help to us if you click that old subscribe button. And in the meantime, maybe have a look at this video, because we think you're going to enjoy it.